Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the second annual Honoring the Legacy of Black American Muslims by Emgage. My name is Salima Saswell, and I serve as the National Senior Organizing Advisor and Executive Director of Emgage, Pennsylvania. This evening, I am pleased to be your host again for our second annual Honoring the Legacy of Black Muslims Town Hall and Celebration. The legacy of Black Muslims, to me, thrives upon strength, humility, resilience, and grace. Tonight, we have brought together our sisters, brothers, and friends, some of the best talent in the American Muslim community today, who will help us to capture the legacy and honor Black Muslims past and present. To get us started, please enjoy this special video presentation by Sheikha Aisha Prime. Thank you all for being with us this evening.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for joining us as we honor the foundational presence and contributions of Muslims of the African diaspora, and of course, what they have meant for our lives, past and present. We can begin this journey all the way back to the beginning of the first moment that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam entered into this world, into the hands of Imani Bashir, who was a Black woman from Abyssinia. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would honor her with being the first to receive khuluqul azim, the best of creation. But of course, the journey doesn't end there. It continues on to the first martyr, our mother Sumayya, continuing on to being one of the wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Sauda, an Abyssinian woman who married the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and continued to raise his children, including Fatima Zahra, after the passing of Khadija radiallahu ta'ala an. And of course, that takes us to our great master and teacher, Bilal ibn Rabah, who not only, of course, climbed to the top of the Kaaba and called the adhan, but also became the minister of finance. That legacy continues to spread, of course, from Mecca and then throughout Africa until it ends into West Africa. We find it from Ethiopia, throughout the north of Africa, and then bringing us even to the Jahenki people of West Africa who've been Muslim for over 1,000 years. We find the presence of West African scholarship all the way from Mansa Musa building the great Timbuktu of Mali, but then Shehu Uthman Den Fodio, his daughter Nana Asma'u. Then we talk about Sheikh Ibrahim and Yas and all of the great Muslims that he inspired. We would take the legacy and the spirit of resilience and unity from Imam Makandal all the way to the diaspora of West Africa in the Americas, where we find them in Haiti, in South America, in North America, building from Sheikh Daoud Faisal of the Black Islamic Muslim Mission, that becomes the birth of the Dar al-Islam movement, all the way to Imam Jamil Al-Amin. That continues to travel westward into our great teachers like Imam Warfdeen Muhammad, and of course, all of the great legacies that we have. Islam has been present in the fabric of America. It has been present in the spirit of do for self and social justice and resilience. It's been present deep within every aspect of the culture. It's been present in the building of scholarship and knowledge and institutions. It is a part of us, and we are the inheritors of that legacy. Thank you so much for joining us. May this program be a means by which Allah continues to enlighten us, elevate us, heal us, and of course, unite the ummah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. May it be a means by which we find our rightful place and continue to build upon the legacy of our pioneers, making them proud that we may all enter into Jannatul Firdaus al-A'la together. Jazakumullah khair for joining us, and welcome the rest of our teachers who will continue to guide us on this journey. Assalamu alaikum.
Ameen. Alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum again. It is your host, Salima Saswell. At this time, I would like to bring to you our amazing CEO, Wael Al-Zayed.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Thank you so much, Salima. It's really an honor to be with all of you tonight. I want to thank you, Salima, for not only putting together this amazing program, but for your tireless work and commitment to the mission here at Emgage of uplifting the very diverse Muslim American community. Our mission will always be to uplift all of us in our diversity and variety, and to take seriously how this diversity is so crucial to moving both the Muslim community forward as well as America. We're excited to announce that one of the main initiatives here at Emgage that we've been working on since last year has been working with Muslim Americans of African heritage on real policy initiatives. The Emgage African American Policy Working Group seeks to identify key policy priorities and partners together in coalitions to engage with the powers that be. With our organizing work this year, we're also hope to prioritize Black Muslim votes in major cities such as Dearborn and Philadelphia. The midterms are coming up, and it is important, more important than ever, that we vote not just for the right people to serve in office, but also to protect our values, our representation, ensure that our voices are heard and are at the table. You know, I want to share with you that there's something I often think about, which is the fact that I am an immigrant. I'm an immigrant Muslim. And really, I owe a debt of gratitude, and so does my family and all immigrants of this country, debt of gratitude to African Americans, including Muslim Americans who made a significant portion of the slaves who were brought here from Africa. What we have today was built upon their sacrifice. And so this is something that really motivates me personally, and I know motivates a lot of Muslim Americans in this country who came here more recently or in the previous decades. This past year, we've seen many challenges, but also many successes. I would be remiss not to celebrate with all of you the recent nomination of Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson for her historic nomination to serve on the Supreme Court. We here at Emgage fully support this nomination and the Biden administration's work that will lie ahead to see her through. We are proud of this, and we believe that she's immensely qualified. And of course, we cannot wait to celebrate her appointment. I don't want to take too much time from this great program. We have some incredible dynamic speakers, ranging from Black Muslim leaderships in our masajids, influencers, young poets, comedians, and elected officials. So please enjoy tonight's event, and thank you so much for supporting Emgage, our mission, and our amazing leaders who you're about to hear from.
Thank you so much, Wael. Assalamu alaikum again, everyone. You'll notice that I have a little one who has joined me. This is little Miss Yaya, as we call her, Yasin Zada Job, who welcomed the family a few months ago and will be my little partner this evening. So I hope we all accept and acknowledge little Miss Yasin. So without any further ado, I have the pleasure and honor of introducing one of my hometown friends from Philadelphia City Commissioner Omar Sabir. City Commissioner Omar Sabir came up in the political game with me in Philadelphia. We worked together so much on various campaigns until he got elected as city commissioner. And I know that he will do so much more of a fantastic job telling you about his journey and to politics and to the office and the seat that he is in now. But at this time, thank you so much, Commissioner Sabir, for being with us. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you for joining us. Tonight, we are celebrating the legacy of Black Muslims in the United States of America, as you know, So for you, how would you describe this legacy and its importance?
Well, I remember being a young man, growing up, um, going to Chicago for the national conventions to see Imam Muhammad speak. I remember going to with my aunt Nafisa down to different places to go to the Riata. Seeing these big national movements, being there and having a community centralized, right? And I remember me being uh, the only Muslim like in a public school, right? When I left school. Now today I just see Muslims like everywhere and we see the growth. But I think I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, right? I just think that I'm just so excited that we just got to do more work, right? Seems like as I see the more and more and more people that I think like, right now, like when I went to Sister Claire Muhammad School, you know, it was like us walking down the street wearing our green uniforms, people laughing at us and stuff like that, and doing all of that. And now it's like these different changes, but it's like if all today we said, that we wanted to open up, we wanted to send all of the Muslims in Philadelphia to go to private Islamic school right now, we wouldn't have the capacity to facilitate it, right? And I'm pretty sure that might be a problem all across our country, right? And so seeing those things is what motivate me now to look at the future, that if we could just, capture maybe even half of our potential right now. And that's what just got me just so motivated. You have children, I have 7 children now. It's like, inshallah, I have, I got another child on the way, right? So it's just been so much that we couldn't even imagine, right? Like my mom got great grandkids that's Muslim, right? So it's a beautiful thing. It's a challenge in itself, but I think we're going to be successful. And I just would really like to see us vote more, right? And it's a simple thing that these things that I'm saying that we need, like social services, schools, and all that kind of stuff, if half of the Muslim population, right, in these midterm elections, in the election, if you just came out and just voted, that would make it so much easier for the Muslims that are in the positions that I'm in to get so much resources for our Islamic community. It's just mind-boggling, right? But a lot of policymakers, as I sit down with them, they say, "Oh, y'all Muslims, y'all don't vote." Some of y'all say, that y'all don't vote. So it's we there at the table, trying to get things for our community. We're trying to get, like we were successful with getting, the school to shut down for Eid, right? But the whole idea, really, from that coalition, was to actually get the whole city shut down, just like they do for Christmas, right? If you're going to shut down for Christmas and you're going to shut down for some of these Jewish holidays, why don't the city shut down and respect our Eid, right? And so we went with the school district one. That was kind of almost like a compromise. And because they were saying, well, if you want to shut it down, you probably won't have to run a ballot question. Do you think the Muslims really going to vote enough to really care about this issue? And, sometimes when you're at the table, it's like, will it, might not, we got all the numbers, but don't necessarily translate that to us actually participating in the election process. And
Right.
that's why we have to vote. And I'm trying to just make it as simple as possible. Because sometimes we're getting old about the wars. I mean, I heard so many excuses about why we don't vote. And then I heard some people say it's haram for us to actually vote. But then it's just like, okay, I say don't vote, but you call me up for all these different, constituent services that we service because we're taxpaying citizens. And I'm like, if we just would vote, it would make it so much easier for our community to get the things that we need. We wouldn't have to be, me making a phone call or my brother or my mother or, some of the connections that we had, throughout just through our relationships. Would it just be something that it's just easy for the Muslims to have? And
Absolutely.
especially in a city like Philadelphia with so much tax revenue. So again, we're on this call. Please vote. It was my journey was a little bit different than a lot of other elected officials. I was the first Muslim with a Muslim name to ever be elected in the state of Pennsylvania, right? And I'm one of 3 city commissioners, right? We oversee one of the largest operations in the country, right? So, but I was supposed to be a commissioner, right? When I first went, I went for traffic court judge, right? And so I was one of the first judges that was ever elected with a Muslim name. And then something historic happened. It was the first time that they got rid of an office, right, after someone won like a primary election. The legislator came, abolished the position, right? First time with a Muslim name. We have Muslim judges in office, but my name is Omar Kareem Sabir on the birth certificate, right? And so before I was running, people were saying, "Oh man, we don't know if a Muslim can do it." I mean, literally, it was like people saying, "Man, I don't know if these people gonna vote for you because of your name." And I'm not trying to be funny. I mean, I don't know if I could push this name. It's people from like different Democratic Party, consultants. We don't know. So I'm like, no, it's going to happen, right? And alhamdulillah, we pushed the envelope. We got through. Then they came and then they took the office away, won a primary, and so then we came back and then we won again. So what is the significance of that, right? That's probably the first time, and maybe like 2 or 3 people in Philadelphia history has won 2 citywide elections, and it's a blessing that we've done that for 2 different positions. And, the needle is moving further. But like I say, there's more work to get done. There's actions. So if we want our things that we want for our community, we have to change this policy about voting. And we vote a lot more. Alhamdulillah, we do. But we have to vote more, right? And we can look at the voting rolls. We can pull up those street lists and we can, look and make phone calls to our family and our friends and get them to come out and vote. We can make sure that the new Muslims that are growing up, we can make sure when they turn 18, we can get them registered. And, we can, make sure that they get out and participate in the election process. But we need policies, which I believe, which is going to excite our base to want to come out and participate in the process. And also, while we're talking here as well, if there's any students that want to do internships or mentorships with our office, we have a digital fellowship. So if anyone across the country wants to do some sort of fellowship in our office, please let us know. We also can partner up with the Muslim student associations all across the country as well. To whatever type of mentorship, that we can do, because it was hard for me coming in, but like I say, we want to make it easier for the next generation that's coming. And our horizon is so beautiful, but however, you have to stop this does not vote stuff, and I believe that once we change it, I'm telling you, just give me 50%. You know what I mean? The position with the Muslims where we at right now, if we increase our voting turnout, then just 50%, I know that I can guarantee so many different resources and accountability, being held other elected officials accountable, if the Muslims will vote. So again, thank you to Emgage, for all of the work that you're doing. You was definitely supportive of our office, and I'm glad to see this conversation happen, because far too often right now, we don't really have our community really gelling the way how it is, right? Like it's more Muslims, but we don't know exactly what the Muslims are doing amongst each other right now. Like COVID played a big part, but we definitely got to get more unity from the Arab community, the African community, everybody. We had to stop all of this, indigenous and this and that and the third. I'm an immigrant and I was born here and all that. No, man, we are all Muslim. We're all tax-paying citizens. We're here now. We have to work together. And we have various social, economic backgrounds. But when it all comes down to it, man, we all are getting slammed. When they look at those names, they want to try to come and, do, things to us. They just want, take us all out. And
thank you so much, Commissioner
together,
Sabir. I'm sorry, I don't want to cut you off. I want you to finish up, but I just want to make note of the fact that you are such an absolutely dynamic speaker that you literally did not need to be prompted by me, and you covered every single thing that I wanted you to cover. So thank you so very much. And go right ahead, finish up. You have about 60 seconds to finish up.
Okay. Salim, you're getting very good at this. That's how you cut people off. That's all right, though. But I appreciate that. Again, I look forward to working with Emgage and everyone in the future. And please reach out to my office. Send me an email. My email address is omar.sabir@phila.gov. Omar, omar.sabir@phila.gov. Please send me an email. Yes, I'm an election commissioner, but however, I'm still an elected official. Anything that we could do to improve, our condition, please let us know.
Thank you so much, Commissioner, and assalamu alaikum. We appreciate having you with us, and we appreciate being a partner of yours always. Our brother, my brother, and my dear friend, Philadelphia City Commissioner Omar Sabir. Thank you. His information is in the chat, guys, if you want to follow up with him in his office. So very informative. The information and resources coming out of his office. And I don't know if you all would remember that Commissioner Omar Sabir was somewhat of a hero for us in Philadelphia during the historic vote count that took place during the 2020 presidential election. So we thank you again for your tireless service and the countless hours that you are working for us daily, Commissioner Omar Sabir. And at this time, I am going to take it over to our fabulous Deputy Organizing Director, Aisha Ahmed. Aisha, are you with us?
I am. I heard my name. Assalamu alaikum. Joining y'all live from Indiana tonight. It is my esteemed honor to introduce our very next guest, Imani Bashir. Now listen, Imani did not make her bio easy on me. Mashallah, mashallah, she is so talented. Fierce journalist who's been featured in some of the biggest outlets, the New York Times, Forbes, Glamour, Essence, The Post, Huffington, and Washington. She is a CEO and extraordinaire of her very own fabulous line of luggage and very practical as well too, which I appreciate. And she's a fearless woman of the world, sharing her adventures across the globe and her digital platforms. And it is just the tip of the iceberg. Assalamu alaikum and welcome, Imani.
MashaAllah. Thank you, Aisha. That's a beautiful welcome. I'm definitely happy to be here with you all this weekend, all the work that you all are doing. I really do appreciate it.
Well, I had to bring it for you. I've been, I'm not gonna lie, I'm definitely a fan and a follower online. So I hope you appreciate, but I appreciate you and we wanna hear from you. So what does the legacy of Black Muslims in America mean to you?
Yeah, absolutely. It means everything to me. For me, just to give you a bit of a background, I'm multiple generations in terms of Black American Muslims. I come from the generations of Muslims that held on to their deen during the transatlantic slave trade. So it's something that I take pride in. My paternal grandparents in the 50s or like the early 60s had to go to court in order to keep their names because they were considered Negroes with these very nuanced, very Muslim, very ethnic names. And so my last name, Bashir, means bringer of good news, bringer of glad tidings. And so for me to be a journalist, someone who is creating narratives and storytelling and, doing these things in this generation, that is my way of creating my legacy. One of the things as a Muslim is that we know is there are things that are going to be left behind for us that we leave behind for the next generations and many other generations that will continue to answer on our behalf on the day of judgment. And so as a journalist, that is something that I want to continue to make sure that I represent with telling the stories of who it is that we are, who it is that I am, and being able to understand there's so much nuance within the framework of being Black and being Muslim. And at those intersections, we don't have to divide the two. We can be both synonymously and that be okay. And so ultimately, I think the legacy for us is continuously strong. I think if we continue to make sure that we are proud in who it is that we are and don't allow others to dictate that we have to separate those identities, and that all also we have been here. We're not new to this. We're true to this. We have held on to our dean. We have, been through multiple generations of keeping our legacies and our traditions and our cultures alive. And I am a result of it. A lot of us are a result of that. And so I think ultimately it's a matter of us standing firm in who it is that we are and not allowing others to dictate what our story is and what it's going to be.
That was so great. I was even taking notes. I love your line, not new to this, true to this. Appreciate you sharing that. And I know I opened up with a question in America, but your experiences stretch across the globe. That identity doesn't shift. And in fact, you've spoken about this in some of your pieces before, and you use the word disruptor. And you're a proud disruptor, not only of the travel space, but in all of your initiatives that you carry. So would you mind sharing with us, what does it mean to be a disruptor to you? Yeah, that's my question.
I mean, absolutely. I think the concept of being a disruptor is going against the grain, right? I was always taught by my father, and may Allah be extremely pleased with him, was that, Islam is the balance. We're not the extremities. So we're not the worst. We're not, you know what I mean? Like, we are the balance. We are that middle ground. We are that calm. We are not the storm. And so the concept is that whatever else is going on around us, we continue to be that consistency for change, right? We continue to be the ones that are advocating for the marginalized, for the people who need it, for those who, are coming here and still don't have a concept of who it is that we are. We are that catalyst for change. And so for me, ultimately, I'm not apologetic about who it is that I am. You are going to mention my name. You are going to speak my name, and it better roll off the tongue, and the syllables better hit the phonetics, or you're going to have to say it again and you got to get it right. So, I'm not going to shortchange my name. I'm not going to, nickname myself. I'm not going to be that person that, I'm someone who wears hijab, right? But I'm also someone who understands the dynamics of what that means. And so therefore, even in being a disruptor, I'm not going to demean other sisters in the process of what it is that looks like for them, right? And so there's just so many forms that I feel that you can be a disruptor, but ultimately it's a matter of just being that catalyst for change, making sure that we are standing in our truth, recognizing that saying that we're Muslim is not putting us at a deficit, but that is continuously pushing us to the forefront of everything.
Again, thank you so much. Everything that you've been sharing, I'm kind of just taking in and having to pause for a minute, but there's so much to really soak in from what you're sharing. And I definitely relate to some of your experiences that you shared. And in my final question, one thing that I really appreciate about your content, whether it's digital or in some of these media outlets, there's so many. It's a diverse array of platforms, right? And there's different ways to engage. So your Instagram reels are so fun and creative, and it's just joy, and I love it. And then at the same time, some of your pieces, like the New York Times article, and then speaking about traveling abroad as a way of prolonging your son's life. That was a very powerful and can be a very emotionally taxing piece. But you have so many powerful pieces like that, and y'all, I definitely encourage you guys to check out her website. Can you just share with us, like, what is it that drives you to still embrace these platforms, and how do you do it in such an impactful way? Because all of these different sources are still coming back to Imani Bashir too, which I also think is remarkable to watch.
Absolutely. I think ultimately, I grew up, I'm born and raised Muslim. My father's born and raised Muslim, my grandfather. And even still, you grow up in a non-Muslim society, and you have those ebbs and flows of who am I? What's my identity? What's my story? How do I fit in this framework of the majority of the people that I'm around? They don't get it. They don't understand it. But I'm not new. Like, I'm not like the concept of Islam, for Black people, the concept of Islam in America, it's not new, but people still don't know it. You know what I mean? And I'm in my latter 30s, and, my dad's in his 60s. My grandfather passed in his upper 80s. And so for me, it was a matter of, okay, if I'm going to attack this in terms of, saying that I'm a writer, saying that I'm a journalist, telling the stories that are important, leaving my mark on the world, then I need to tell the stories that, number one, matter, but are honest. They're authentic to who it is that I am and what my story is. And so ultimately, that's been pretty much the the icing on the cake for me is that personal storytelling component of letting people into who it is that I am. What is it like being a Black Muslim woman traveling around the world, giving birth to a baby abroad, raising a child abroad who's multilingual, who's Black, who's, living amongst different cultures and really learning how to interact and engage with the world. It's very intentional. And so ultimately, that's where all of that pulls from, is making sure that, maybe there's someone or someone's out there that's saying there has to be another way. There has to be something else for me. There has to be, another avenue that I could try in order to let people into who it is that I am. And I think that as a traveler, that's the best way that I get a chance to have people ingratiate who it is that I am, to be able to say, wow, I've never met a Black American Muslim. I never met a Black Muslim woman. I never met a Black Muslim in hijab and all of those other things. And within those nuances, actually have a conversation with me, actually see how my family dynamic is with my husband and with my son, and give them a different interpretation of maybe something that they possibly would have never gotten if they've never come encounter with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. I really hope folks were listening on this piece. I might be biased, but this was definitely some of my favorite. Thank you so much, Imani.
I appreciate you, Aisha. Thank you so much. Thank you, Emgage. Thank you, Salima. I appreciate all the work that you all are doing. Thank you for inviting me for this very important conversation, because we need more of it. And it's so vital for us to be able to speak about who it is that we are and how it is that we show up in the world. So I appreciate you all. Thank you.
You are so welcome back anytime. Thank you so much. And now we're going to turn it over to a pillar of the community and my very own hometown hero, Congressman Andre Carson, with a special message.
Assalamu alaikum. This is Congressman Andre Carson. I want to thank Emgage for hosting this very important event on the legacy of Black Muslims. As a proud Black Muslim, I'm always heartened by these efforts to share our story with others. We've been a part of this country since its inception. We've endured countless injustices and achieved amazing triumphs. But through it all, we've persevered and enriched our country in many ways. What would America be without the bold activism of a Malcolm X, the fighting spirit of a Muhammad Ali, the perseverance and principles of a Representative Ilhan Omar? These and other Americans are a part of a long and fascinating story that is still being written. I hope this town hall inspires all of you to learn more about that great history. And I think we can honor the rich tradition of Black history, Black Muslim history, by studying and pushing that legacy forward. Thank you, Emgage. I love you. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you so much, as always, for all your love and support, Congressman Andre Carson. We can't wait to have you back with us again. For now, let's welcome back our moderator, Salima Suswell.
Thank you so much, Aisha. You are fabulous at moderating as usual. And thank you so much to Imani B and also Congressman Carson. Thank you guys so much for your input and participation today. Okay, now this next speaker that is coming up is very dynamic. This is my guy, Brother Mark Crane. Mark Crane is the director, executive director of Dream of Detroit, an initiative to combine community organizing with housing and land development to revitalize a neighborhood and build a thriving, healthy community on the west side of Detroit. Dream organizes local residents as well as folks from throughout the metro area of the Muslim community in the fight to achieve racial and economic justice in Detroit neighborhoods. We're going to hear so much more from Brother Mark, who prior to Dream honed his skills in digital strategy and community organizing at Move On, the Obama 2012 campaign, and the Inner City Muslim Action Network. He is also a significant organizational development experienced professional and currently serves on boards of the Detroit Justice Center, Rethink Media, and Emgage Foundation. Welcome, Brother Mark, and thank you for being with us.
Alhamdulillah, thank you. Thank you for having me. very grateful to join the conversation.
Alhamdulillah. And again, we're sticking to our theme, and we will ask you, what does the legacy of Black Muslims in the United States of America mean to you? First question.
Sure. I appreciate that. So, as the sister did prior, just to get my background. So I come from a convert background, actually. I accepted Islam when I was 20 years old. I was a second semester senior in college. I come from, born and raised in the city of Detroit, grew up working down the street from what was originally Temple Number 1, but with very little exposure to the Muslim community, actually. And so when I was exposed to Islam in a really formal way, beyond the cultural references that we all kind of absorb and maybe don't know where they come from. For me, it was an introduction to a tradition of freedom fighting, to a tradition of fighting against racism and imperialism in this country and what this country does around the world a lot of times historically. It was entering a tradition that had a real focus on justice, and a tradition whose text, whose scripture, whose mandates, whose precepts were so clear that they couldn't be manipulated for injustice in the same way that other scriptures had been and weaponized against our people in this country. And so, those were things that led me to Islam. And so when I think about the legacy of Black Muslims in this country, to bring it back to Detroit a little bit, I think about people like Dusay Muhammad Ali, right, who opened a masjid in Detroit in the early 1920s. But prior to that was a contemporary of Marcus Garvey, was an editor in the newspaper for the United Negro Improvement Association, Universal Negro Improvement Association. And so I think about an international freedom fight that Muslims have been engaged in. I think about, obviously, people like Malcolm X, who preached less than a mile from here. But particularly, I think about the fact that there were people in Detroit like Reverend Albert Cleage, like Jimmy and Grace Lee Boggs, really historic, revolutionary Pan-Africanists and community organizers in Detroit who were trying to recruit Malcolm to run for Senate as part of the Michigan Freedom Now Party, right? So I think about that legacy of the Black Muslim experience. More recently, I think about people like Judge Adam Shakur, who was the first Muslim 36th District Court judge here in Detroit. And people like Treasurer Eric Sabir, who's the Wayne County Treasurer here in Michigan. I think about those people who are laying those local roots, who are doing that day-to-day work in our local political spaces that's so important and setting examples for us. Judge Shakur argued a case more than 40 years ago for the Adhan to be played over the loudspeaker in the neighborhood here on the west side of Detroit. So I think about those legacies, those historic firsts. And to close it, I think about, I'll close it with two more people. I think about people like Congressman Keith Ellison, obviously never represented Michigan, but from Detroit. And specifically, he comes to mind because just recently I was looking at a tweet where he shouted out, gave respect to and thanks to a couple of pillars in our local Detroit community, Imam Abdullah El Amin and a brother named Mitchell Shamsuddin. Mitchell has run a Black Muslim Political Action Committee in Southeastern Michigan for years, was the first person to organize the Muslim Day at the Capitol here in Michigan. Imam Abdullah actually was running for city council in Detroit when I first converted. I came back home and saw his billboards around town. So I think about local legends like that, who actually, maybe don't have a prominent national stage or profile, but people who do thank them for the places, for the parts that they played in their lives. And lastly, I think about our legacy, not just in terms of political liberation, but also spiritual liberation, right? Which is cultural too. I think about the fact that years before I ever really knew what Islam was, I was sitting around talking about mind over matter and soul before flesh. Angels hold a pen, keep a record in time, because Mos Def was putting that into our community, right? I think about, and this is to break my Detroit commitments here. I talk about Mos Def, but Imam Jamil, and I'll end with that. Our Imam, who's a political prisoner in this country, modern day political prisoner, but who lived the freedom fight so fully in this country, and ultimately came to the conclusion that my personal liberation, the thing that's going to free my soul in this country, is Islam, right? Beyond all the organizing, beyond like the thing that's going to give me the spiritual peace that I need is Islam. And it also motivates me to do this work in the world, but it calms my heart. It gives me that truth about the ultimate justice and where we're all headed. So those are what I think about when I think about the legacy of Black Muslims.
SubhanAllah, that was beautiful, Brother Mark. Again, we are so grateful for the work that you do with Move On organization and on our Emgage board. But I would like you to share with our audience more about what drives your vision for Dream of Detroit.
Yes, thank you. And I appreciate the chance to share that. Folks, don't always draw the connection, but to me, this, all of this work is political in a sense. So Dream is a Muslim-led community development organization that we're building here in Detroit. We say that our mission is to combine community organizing with housing and land development to revitalize our neighborhood and build a healthy community. And if you've ever been to Detroit or visited the Muslim community here, we're really anchored by the Muslim Center, Mosque and Community Center on the west side of Detroit. And in a 10-block impact turf around this masjid, we've been building our community over the last 8 or 9 years. Just recently, I stepped into the role here as executive director full-time, the first time we've had that role filled. And so we are really trying to push forward full steam ahead, reviving this community. The reason we do this work is precisely because of what you just asked about. It's because of legacy. It's because of the incredibly rich history of Muslims in Detroit, Muslims of all backgrounds, but specifically Black Muslims, right? And I mentioned Dusay Muhammad Ali. We know the roots of the Nation of Islam here. Sheikh Aisha has some great videos online talking about Muslims in jazz and the Ahmadiyya movement and all the outreach that led Muslims in that space to accept Islam and start that journey. Literally 200 feet from me, we have the Mel Wanzo Halal Jazz Cafe. I don't know if y'all got that in your masjid, but that's what we got in our masjid. So that's the history in this city. And what we're trying to do with Dream is when you come to Detroit and you ask where the Muslims are, I know what you're going to hear. You're going to hear about Dearborn. You're going to hear about Hamtramck. You might hear about the Muslim Center itself, but you're not going to hear about a whole neighborhood. And that's what that's what we want you to be able to hear about. We want you to come over to the Muslim Center and then walk down Woodrow Wilson Street after we rename it and see all these Muslim businesses and these sustainable businesses that we're building over here. We want you to see all the families that have moved in around here. So that's kind of the work that we do with Dream. And I'll mention, we got years into this work, hundreds of thousands of dollars into raising money to rehab homes. We've rehabbed 12 homes in our neighborhood. We've opened a transitional home for previously incarcerated men. We have a home that's an artist residency. We got several hundreds of thousands of dollars and years into this project. And we had to step back and say, we can't keep raising this type of money to do these individual home rehabs one by one in this neighborhood that's deteriorating faster than we can help revive it. And so we had to say, and I'm close here, Sister Salima, we had to say, we need to get to the root causes, right? We can't just, Muslims are great at service, right? MashaAllah. We're great at showing up, at the end of a process and offering what we can to the people who are in need. We don't often try to get to the root causes as a national community. We don't often go upstream. We're downstream where we see people floating by in the river and we're pulling them out the river, but we're not going upstream and seeing how they're falling in or who's pushing them in. And so for us, we had to say, what made Detroit's neighborhoods look like this? And the truth is, it was a political failure that caused hundreds of thousands of dollars to go into foreclosure. And part of our work is to fight back against that, because as Muslims, we should be able to universally say that housing is a human right. So that's a bit about what we're doing at Dream. And I welcome everybody to visit dreamofdetroit.org to learn more about that work, especially if you're in Michigan.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Brother Mark. That is beautiful. In closing, and my final question for you, as we are headed into our midterm elections, can you tell us why organizing is so very important, and how can organizations committed to GOTV, get out the vote efforts, better reach Black Muslim communities? How do you see your role at MoveOn.org and Emgage going to help? How do you see your role at Move.org, on.org, and also Emgage? How is that role going to help us to get there?
Sure thing. So just for clarity, I stepped away from Move On to be able to run Dream full time. So I can reflect on some of that work though, and what we do, or what the organization does in the community. But to me, to the first part of your question, the bottom line is that organizing is at its core, it's a democratic act, right? Like it exists because we are in a democracy where we have the capacity to pull people together, to pool resources, to pool people power, and to make a difference through numbers, to make demands that are backed up by organized voters who are able to hold people accountable. And so, for us, we could try to tap into big money, but that isn't who we want to represent. Well, who we want to represent are the people. And so what we want to do is organize the people to stand up and advocate for what they want, what we want, right? And so that's at a bottom line why organizing is so important. And mind you, my mind could be warped, right? Because I came of age sort of in the Barack Obama election where everybody wanted to be an organizer all of a sudden. But for me, I mean, there's a lot of truth in this work of empowering individuals to see their worth, see their own ability to lead and to set an agenda and to push forward with it. So that's that. What I'll say to the second part of the question is, Black Muslims are everywhere that you see Black people. And sometimes people forget that, but the reality is, we are everywhere. So reach all of us, right? Because Black people are not voting at the rates that we need to be voted either. And I'm not here to stand here. I'm not about to blame us. I'm not going through that script. But what I'm saying is there's a lot of mobilization that needs to happen of Black Americans in general, and Black Muslims are a subset of that. And quite often we share the exact same political priorities as our Black cousins of every other faith. And so don't forget about any of us. And as Black Muslims, we are keenly focused on people who look like us but don't share our faith. Those are our people too. So this isn't just, I only care about issues that are impacting squarely the Muslim community. I'll close with that. And lastly, say just in terms of Move On, Emgage, other organizations that I've joined, part of the work is putting Black people at the leadership table at these types of organizations. And it's not to say that we got to be at every organization or that everything is for us, but when I see institutions being built that have the capacity, have the potential to have a massive impact on our community, let alone if they want to actually speak for our community, what that means to me is that we need to be at the table helping to make the decisions that those institutions are being guided by. And so whether that's Move On or Emgage or Empower Change or wherever else it might be, that's part of the work, is us being there to steer those conversations in ways that actually both mobilize and benefit our communities. So I appreciate the chance to speak with y'all again, Salima. Thank you so much for this. And thank you for everything that you're doing with Emgage. I think you're muted. Salima, I think you're saying really kind things, but I think you're muted.
Oh, wow, I was muted. Sorry about that. Thank you so much, is what I was saying, Brother Mark, for your service here today. Thank you for your service to the community, and thank you for your service on the board of Emgage. We appreciate you and honor you today. Thank you.
Alhamdulillah, thank you so much. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. At this time, we are in for a treat. Not that everything that has happened thus far hasn't been absolutely amazing, and I hope you guys are all enjoying yourselves. But at this time, we are in for a treat of a little entertainment from a member of our youth, Noor Bowman, who is actually the only one who was with us last year, and back by popular demand, she is our baby girl from the city of Philadelphia, Noor Bowman. Noor Bowman is an undergrad at Drexel University studying business administration. She is currently a research assistant and intern for the Philadelphia Health Commissioner and serves on the board of the Sabir Foundation. In her free time, Noor enjoys creative writing and actively supporting her community in a multitude of ways. And one of those amazing ways I'd like to mention that we got to see was at the end of last year when Philadelphia had the pleasure of receiving some refugees from Afghanistan. We got to witness young Noor in her prime as a leader, organizing, serving those members of our faith who were here based upon extenuating circumstances. And we thank Noor for all of her talent and her leadership and all of her goodwill in the city of Philadelphia and beyond. Mrs. Noor Bowman, please enlighten us with some of your spoken word poetry. Assalamu alaikum, Noor Bowman.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you all so much. I'm so grateful and honored to be here yet again. And I really hope that you guys enjoy my work. So as always, please let me know in the comments what you think about my pieces. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Lost generations. A full-on war zone right in these streets. A draft wasn't necessary to determine their fate. And by the time we all realized it was far too late, consumed up anger, holding guns filled with bullets of hate. One shot and it's done. Black man always on the run ever since he first witnessed the barrel of a gun. A gun pointed to his face when taken from his land, and that same gun now resides in his hand and resides in his memory like a haunted dream. The sound of bullets linger in his subconscious, a familiar sound, ancestors scattered, descendants on the ground. It's like second nature, something passed down, something that forces your legs to the ground. You gotta stay strapped, gotta stay 10 toes down. His brother's been shot, another brother down. A gun pointed to his face when taken from his land. Now that same gun resides in his hand. The hand of one who shares his hue, the hand of his brother, friend turned foe, the hand of his master, supposed master of his fate, the hand of time saying it's time to go, the hand of someone young shaking with regret. And once the deed is done, he utters, oh no. Hand of a man with a strange hue. He isn't of a typical shade because his pigment is blue. A gun pointed to his face when taken from his land. That same gun now resides in his hand. Our shared story. I've crossed the Red Sea. I've crossed the sea dyed red. Died because many of us ended up dead. Boy, was that a trip. Some were liable to trip. Conditions were like hell on that damn ship. Some longed for a solution and went for a deep dive back into the land of souls. But that is neither here nor there because I am writing and you are here reading our shared story. I didn't go too far and I felt like I was worlds away. Both of us were shackled. We were forced to live as slaves and we thought we'd die this way. They mutilated our backs, tore into our bodies, but little did they know that light was emitted from those cracks. Frequently they pierced, but never into our souls. And when a whip wasn't enough, they employed more. I had a big boulder on my stomach, back laid against the floor. I was being crushed, but never crushed to the core, because beyond this struggle lied something so much more. And I was standing, stomach pressed against a tree. They kept on beating, but they couldn't beat me, because beyond these eyes only, if you knew what I could see, a place more elevated for the patient like me. Our bodies were in bondage, but our hearts roamed free. We both found our comfort in a faith of liberation. We are two different Black bodies, descendants of different nations, separated by many generations, but our stories are so similar. Only if we had known that our struggles were connected and we were never alone. When he had led the call to prayer for the very first time, somehow we felt it and our souls fell in line, shoulder to shoulder, heel to heel, so our hearts could heal. And when I winced for my brother. And when we prayed for one another. And when we first arrived, they taught me from a book I couldn't touch, words I couldn't see. Truths were only relegated to a class that was free. And in that book, I was informed about another group just like me. And they too had crossed the Red Sea, except in that story, they became free. No wonder they hid this truth from me. Exceptional. You must be exceptional. You must be extraordinary. Far from the ordinary to be respected in Black, Black and a woman, Black and a man, Black and a person just living on this land. I can't just be Black. I can't just be Black and Muslim praying 5 times a day. I need to be Black, Muslim, and exceptional in every kind of way. My Islam is questioned, intellect too, as if Islam is only meant for a person that looks like you. And when you try to be inclusive and oh so kind, you begin to speak about the first few Black people that come to mind. And as Muslims, we all love Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, our beloved Nabi. And of course, we love Muhammad. You know, Muhammad Ali, how special was he? He knew how to float like a butterfly and sting like a bee. Extraordinary and exceptional as far as I can see. But what about Cassius Clay? What about Malcolm before Shabazz? What about Malcolm before that X? What about Malcolm Little before we knew what would happen next? What about that Black man crossing the road? What about that Black man whose story hasn't been told? What about that Black man who moved next door? What about that Black man who walks into your store? What about that Black man with his head on the floor, begging just like you for so much more? What about that Black man from a different faith? What about that Black man new to the neighborhood, not a familiar face? What about that Black boy friends with your son? What about that Black boy just trying to have fun? What about that Black boy asking for her hand? What about that Black man who was given the adhan? See, we all love Bilal, but Bilal in theory. And when we face the truth of it all, it gets a bit scary. So what about Bilal? But Bilal before the adhan. You see, this is the part of the story we too often fail to understand. Our beloved Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam not only loved Bilal because he was one of the greatest to walk the land, not only because he was bestowed the greatest of gifts when he was given the adhan, Rihna biha ya Bilal. But the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam loved him before all of this. He loved him because he was a man. Thank you all so very much.
Assalamu alaikum. Wow. SubhanAllah, we snap hands in the spoken word world because that was so absolutely powerful. MashaAllah. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much, our Noor Bowman. I call Noor our youth poet laureate of the American Muslim community. And we are so, so very honored to be in your presence on this evening, Noor Bowman. Thank you. And assalamu alaikum. At this time, I'm going to bring up my brother from another mother. I would like to call him Brother Muhammad Gula. Brother Muhammad Gula is our national organizing director. He is also the executive director of our Virginia chapter. He wears many hats, and he is my brother. He keeps me sane on many a day when I am trying to keep it all together. Brother Muhammad, I think you're going to join us by video, inshallah.
Hey, assalamu alaikum. How are you? Thank you, sister. Thank you, sister. And thank you for blessing us with Yaya. I know it was short-lived, but so it's a blessing to see her. We finally got to see her, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. I'm gonna let you go now with Imam Siraj Wahaj.
All right. Assalamu alaikum. Really, our next guest, really leader, Amir, needs no introduction. Imam Siraj, really thank you so much for your time this evening. We're honored to have you here to hear your blessed words. And really, I'll start off with the first question, which was kind of similar to everyone else's. What does the legacy of Black Muslims in the U.S. mean to you?
Assalamu alaikum. I'm going to first say that, alhamdulillah, rabbil alameen. Actually, we're driving now. Okay, so I'm gonna give you the best I can, but I want to say that I am grateful to Allah the Almighty to be a Muslim, and we had a lot of Muslims, alhamdulillah, in our area, and you know that many of us came from different traditions. I came from the same tradition as my brother Malcolm X, Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz, Muhammad Ali, Imam Warithuddin Muhammad. So I came from that tradition, and it was very, very happy to be a Muslim, grateful to be a Muslim. And I think that Muslims ought to be patient with the various brothers and sisters who come to Islam in many different ways. In the end, we end up the same way. Can you hear me?
Yeah, no, I can hear you. Jazakallah khair for that. Jazakallah khair for that. And
you know, you look very good, man. Alhamdulillah. I haven't seen a black beard like that, and I can't remember how long.
You know, it took me a little bit to grow it out. You know, I'm trying to catch up to you, alhamdulillah. But one thing that we love about you, Imam, and a lot of the times that you share your words is the history that you share with us, just like you just did. And really, I feel like as a historian, you can share a lot of the stories better than most of us can, or really any of us can, even as our Amir, in the work that you've done. Tonight, we would love to hear from you a little bit more about your life, your story, and your experience as not only a leading Black Muslim, but a regular, just a Muslim leader in America.
Yeah, the thing is, and that's why I'm trying to highlight this. I'm saying this for a particular reason. that in 1975, with the death of Mr. Elijah Muhammad, his son Imam bin Muhammad took over and introduced to us what you call the Sunnah. And it was a nice transition. And I can say that I think people ought to appreciate the Nation of Islam where they came from. Because you think about it, the people that I named, Malcolm Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz, one of the most beloved of our leaders. Muhammad Ali, the same way. Muhammad Ali, I had the privilege of being with him. I know him. You know, we hung out together, and he's a funny guy. Muhammad Ali, funny guy, right? He's on a plane one day, and the flight attendant said, "Mr. Muhammad Ali, please put on your seatbelt. Man don't need no seatbelt." And she said, "Superman don't need no plane." So he put on his seatbelt. So when you look at him, beloved, when you look at Malcolm, beloved, when you look at Imam Warithuddin Muhammad, beloved, when you look at Imam, because of the experience that we had, having been Black and at the same time then becoming Muslim. And one thing that Martin Luther King Jr. said, one of my beloved, he said, "He who gets behind in a race must forever remain behind or run faster than the man up front." So when you start studying the history of African Americans, I don't think many people could have handled it, and could all the things that we have suffered from, you couldn't even imagine. If I gave you some of the tests, for instance, Black people had to take a test, a literacy test, before they could vote. And in fact, Sheikh, I'm going to give you one of the questions. If you answer it right, I give you $1,000 right now. Are you ready? This is one of the questions, right? Just sorry. How many bubbles in a bar of soap?
Oh, dang. Is that a trick question?
Of course it's a trick question.
Yeah.
You can't answer that question. And see, it was things like that. It was, you ever hear of reckless eyeballing?
Well, maybe not in the same terms that,
well,
maybe not in the same terms.
There was a time that a Black person Black man couldn't look at a white woman.
Yeah.
You can get lynched, serious. You go to jail, you can get lynched, you can get beat. And if people understood the circumstances that Black people found themselves in, and you would thank Allah if any of them became Muslim. Really, it's a big test. And I'm happy, and I'm just so happy to be a Muslim. Allah is great. I bear witness of no God but Allah, and Muhammad, peace and blessing be upon him, is his messenger. But I would like to see Muslims share this message with the rest of our people as well. It's a wonderful message, and it will transform us for real, as it did 40, 50, 60 years ago.
MashaAllah, Jazakallah khair. And I have one final question.
Yes, sir.
You know, I was watching, I don't know if a lot of people have watched this because I know it's a little Hollywood, but I was watching The Godfather of Harlem. And it was a show about Bumpy Johnson. And like you said, our brother Malcolm and the work that they did to combat drug addiction in Harlem. And it actually reminded me of the work that you did, you know, in Brooklyn when you were combating the same kind of drug addiction and the drugs that were in the street. And I feel kind of just like my beloved brother, Mark Crane had mentioned, I feel as though a lot of this work and a lot of the Muslim community has kind of disconnected from this type of work that's, you know, really grassroots in the streets. And as organizers, because many of us on the call as well are organizers or active in our work, how would you kind of approach being able to connect with other community members to get them to act in some of the same ways?
It's not easy. It's not easy. I'm letting you know now that it's not easy. It takes a lot of work, a lot of dedication. We had brothers in our community, committed brothers. Some brothers from our community been in prison, just like Malcolm was, and a lot of other people that came out of prison, and that means that they weren't scared. So we had brothers who studied martial arts. I don't recommend everybody to do that. We had brothers who studied martial arts. We had brothers on the correction officers, for instance, in our community. So we worked together. We worked together with authorities, and then the people knew us. They know that we loved them, that we weren't trying to be police, but we were trying to say, man, you can't do that. You can't sell these drugs here. in all of our community, many of our communities are being destroyed. And I want to leave you with a tradition, but I think it's very important for Muslims to understand. The Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him, taught us that there was a man one day, he went out to give sadaqah. He wanted to give charity to someone. So late at night, he put charity in the hand of someone and he didn't know who they were. And the implication is that it was a lot of money. So the next day he heard that he gave that money to a thief. And he said, oh, Allah, I didn't mean to give it to a thief. So he went out again the next day and gave money to a prostitute. And he said, oh, because people started talking. He said, oh, no, I didn't mean to do it. He went out the third day and gave it to a rich person. So Allah revealed to him that perhaps the money you gave to the thief now will help him stop being a thief. And the money you gave to the prostitute will help her stop being a prostitute. And the money you gave to a rich man may be seen as an example. And I'm saying there are conditions. There are a lot of conditions that our people are suffering from and that we have to deal with those conditions. We can't just beat them up. And we have to do it with love and respect and kindness and wisdom. So this is what I'm saying, that I see now our job is to go out there and talk to the people. I've talked to brothers in our community. We want to go out. I told let's go out. You know, when I was in the days of the Nation of Islam, I used to knock on people's door. Thousands of people, thousands of doors I knocked on. And I'm trying to, engage them in the Islam. And alhamdulillah, many of them came to the masjid, they came to the temple. So I'm saying that we need to get back, grassroots. We need to get back in the street and let the people see us and let the people know that we're concerned, because we are concerned.
Jazakallah khair, Imam. Thank you again for joining us. I love you, as we all
not
do.
like I love you. Not like I love you.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah.
Thank you,
I must also give my salam.
Assalamu alaikum, mashallah.
Assalamu
Take care of
alaikum.
yourself. Wa
Thank
alaikum
you so
salam.
much for being with us. We appreciate you.
All right. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you so very much.
All right.
Thank you so much, Muhammad. Sorry I had to jump in on you at the end, but I'm just so enthralled by the email. Mashallah, I'm so happy you were able to be with us. At this time, I am going to introduce Emgage's social media specialist, Sister Zainab Yusuf, who will introduce State Representative Mauree Turner. Zainab.
Thank you so much, Salima. I am thrilled to welcome Representative Mauree Turner tonight. Rep. Turner is the newly elected state representative for Oklahoma's 88th House District. They are the first Muslim member of the Oklahoma legislature and the first publicly non-binary U.S. state lawmaker. They are somebody who believes in the power and duty that they have to change the world for the better. And their life's work is geared towards fighting for the civil rights and liberties of all who enter America. So without further ado, thank you so much, Rep. Turner, for joining us tonight. I think that we all see the theme this evening. What does the legacy of Black Muslims in the United States mean to you?
Thank you. Salams. One, I guess maybe part of my appearance, I actually was running back and just finished knocking doors today. So we're doing resources for all of our, sending out resources to all of our constituents in House District 88, just food assistance, utility assistance, rental assistance, things like that. So I've been doing all of that kind of back to back to back. This is the last thing I have today. So, but I think for me, there are so many, I guess, kind of intersecting parts of my identity that allow me to be here with you all today. And being Black in America and in Oklahoma, right, is a really, really big part of that. I think about the legacy that my mother, my father, my grandmother, and everybody else in my family, right? My grandfather all kind of leave for me and what they taught me growing up. And I think one of the most formative lessons I had as a child was that my voice was going to always be very powerful. And so to use it whenever I had an opportunity to, right? And to also make sure that I am continuously advocating for other folks, right? Amplifying other voices when I don't have a lens that they do. I can tell you that I never thought I would be a representative. I never wanted to be a representative. I ran for office back in, I guess, started in 2019, and ran because when I was, before this, I was a community organizer for the ACLU, American Civil Liberties Union, and specifically in doing the work at the Oklahoma legislature, I realized that the people who made policy about our everyday lives, like I grew up, my father and my grandfather incarcerated, and the people who made policy about our everyday lives would never have to deal with the other side of that policy, right? Would never have to live like us. My family came to Islam via the corrections system, right? Or the carceral system. My father and my grandfather were in prison and converted while in there. So to hear the Imam speak, right? But also I remember the first time I heard the Imam speak, which was at Masjid Bowman in Oklahoma City a couple of years back. And that's the masjid where my parents got married at. But anyway, though, so I wanted to make sure that we were looking for community organizers, folks who had continuously seen the hardship, right? The hardship and had seen the drive that community has, right? Folks who have been continuously filling the gaps that our government leaves for us when they don't allow us to help make those policies, right? And so I started looking for people to run for office. I started looking for community organizers, activists. I started looking for folks who had been directly impacted by our carceral system, folks who had been on food stamps, right? Folks who had to live like me, like us. And folks started to turn the question back on me, started to ask me when I was going to run for office, when they could volunteer, these different things. And I realized that so much of community organizing, a good portion, if not all of community organizing, is consistently answering a call to action. And the folks of House District 88 were asking me to run for office. And so I did, right? And I think about what that means for my community, right? And I think about what that means for the future of Oklahoma, to have equitable policy, right? To have someone that is always saying, like, are we missing a lens, right? Are there other communities we should be amplifying? Who else is doing this work, right? And I think that is so much of also like what the legacy of being Black, right, in America is, right, and I think even more specifically, right, maybe even being a Black Muslim is what is, right, how do we continuously take care of each other, right? How do we take care of community? I get to be here, right? Most of us, probably a good portion of us get to be here today because of some form of deep community care. And I think like that is the core of Islam, right, is community care. And so ultimately, right, I think like that's what I think about when I think of the legacy of being Black and Muslim in America and what that really kind of means, and a little bit of how it brought me to be here on this webinar with you all. I don't know.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. It really is amazing, and thank you so much for the work that you've done leading to your public service as an elected official. One thing that I'm personally really inspired by is your ability to understand and shed light on like the intersectionalities within complex policy issues. Can you tell us how you utilize this holistic approach to tackle these issues, and also why it's important to embody an intersectional framework as an elected official?
For sure. I think it's a really big question that I might not be able to like fully, I don't know, encompass or answer, but I think the most effective policymakers are folks who are continuously saying like, okay, do we, like I mentioned earlier, right? Do we have all the lenses, or are there more ways we can bring people into the fold? I don't ever want to make a policy that I didn't talk to as many people as I could about before I do, right? Because there are so many people that are affected, and there are so many people that could be hurt if we don't do community care, right? If we're not continuously thinking of, like, critically thinking about the policies that we're putting forth. I think the best policymakers are community organizers and activists, right? Folks who have continuously been in the trenches and seen the worst of the worst, and either lived to tell the story, right? And or made sure that communities live to tell a story, right? And so whenever I get ready to write a piece of legislation, I make sure that I am reaching out to the folks in the community who are working specifically on that, community organizers and or nonprofits or institutions that are filling those gaps that I'm trying to create policy that so we don't have. Because while I sit at a very kind of interesting intersection, right, there are folks who have had to sit deep in it, right, in a way that probably better equips them to be able to tell me how to do my job. Because I think that's the ultimate thing as a lawmaker, as a policymaker, is that I am elected to listen to the people, and I'm elected to write policy on what they tell me is bettering their lives. And I'm only here to say, like, okay, like, and here are maybe some other ways that we can connect, or here are some ways that we could possibly make it better. I'm not here to say absolutely no, right? That's not how we save your community, right? Because I think that's also a really big part too, right? Is that our vulnerable and our marginalized and disenfranchised communities know how to fix themselves, right? And if we've got the power to be able to amplify those solutions, then that is what we're called to do. I think having a savior complex does not, especially in this specific role, does not help anybody, right, but oneself. And like I said, I never in a million years thought that I would be sitting here on a Zoom with you all, right? I certainly didn't think I was going to be the first Muslim elected in Oklahoma. And so, you know, mashallah, like we get to do these really, really amazing things, and I get to wake up in a district that actively chooses me and I choose them, and we get to do this work together. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things, right? Is that we get to continuously wake up and choose to do this work together, this hard, this heartbreaking, but also enriching work that creates a place where we don't just get to scrape by and survive, but we get to thrive. So, and you can't do it. I wholeheartedly do not believe you can do this work without an intersectional lens, right? Without, and do justice to this work without actively thinking about how you're affecting other people.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. That was really beautiful. And my last question is, just looking at your resume, you know, you've done so much on a plethora of crucial issues. So for our audience today, especially our up and coming young leaders, can you share some achievements, challenges, or general advice that you have for them?
For sure. I would probably ultimately say, right, like finding what calls to you, like what kind of social issues really call to you is really, really important when you are getting involved in organizing or activism, right? In any way, shape, or form, because you want to make sure that it is something that at the end of the day, you're like, this is some hard work that we're engaging in, right? But it calls to me in a deeper way. So I'm not going to give up on it, because it is very, very easy to get burnt out in this work. So finding something that you are willing to say, like, this is hard, and today was a hard day, but I'm willing to pick it up and do it all over again. I think also being comfortable with the uncomfortable parts of all of these things, right? Is that, like, we're continuously moving uphill in a very, very steep hill in some aspects, right? Especially if we live in red states. So understanding, right? Because, like, I work in a legislature, right? It's very amazing that we have elected our first Muslim in Oklahoma, right? But I work in a legislature where folks that I sit on their committees, right? Whether they're chairs or vice chairs or just like committee members, sit on these committees, and some of my coworkers still won't look at me. They won't say hello to me, right? Won't hear my policies. Like, I can't get my own bills heard in my own committees sometimes. And so I think it's very, very important to also realize that, like, there are some parts of the work that move very, very fast because we all know that we are moving in the same direction, because we all understand, right, that our win is the same, right? And there are some places where it's a lot slower, right? Like me in House District 88, we work very, very fast because we all understand the win is ultimate community care. And we all understand, right, how we want to get there. Me in the legislature work a little bit slower because my end goal is still community care. And some of the folks that I work with, that's not it, right? If I'm just being open and honest. So I guess that's also a part, right, is to continuously be honest with yourself about the areas that you're working in, because sometimes, right, the imposter syndrome that we face is honestly just the truth of the people that you work around and with, right? You think, like, maybe I don't deserve to be here, or I'm not doing good work, so I shouldn't be here. But sometimes we are doing the best work that we can in the situations that we're in. And ultimately, right, like don't run yourself ragged. I think I did that all throughout college. Any time I could step up and be a leader in any kind of way, shape, or form, I was there. And not to socially climb, but because I'm very bad at delegating. I'm like, okay, like this could be done a little bit better. And so I'm like, let me just go ahead and do it. And so I think the importance of what I have learned now, right? The importance of delegating, right? We all get to learn and grow when we delegate, right? And things might not turn out how you specifically envision them, but yet again, right? If we all determine what the win is and what the means to win is, then there's no way that we can really ultimately fail, right? So I think like those are some of the things. I've gotten awards and things like that, like Oklahoma's like 30 under 30 and stuff like that. But I don't think, for me, I don't think the awards or the titles or things like that are things that I really am too concerned with. I think ultimately it's just the community care at the end of the day. And I like being a community organizer because my style of community organizing is I get to sit back and I get to build something really great, and then other people get to go out in front and shine. And I think like also that's a little bit of my reservation because I am deeply introverted. But I have to be out there in front of people all day, every day, and either on the doors or on the phones or on Zooms and things like that. And so also ultimately making sure that you are taking the time that you need, right, to recharge. And that looks different for everybody. And also noting that self-care is not just how you care for yourself, but it's also how you allow your community to care for you, right? When you're hurting or when you're shouldered too much weight or something like that. And so I think that might be all of the advice that I could share.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much, Rep Turner. I know that we are all so inspired by your humility and your dedication to your community. So thank you so much. It was an honor having you tonight. Now I'm going to pass it back to our amazing host, Salima.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. And thank you so much, Zainab. And thank you so much to Representative Turner. Alhamdulillah. At this time, we are going to have our last speaker before we get into some more entertainment. And at this time, I would like to call upon Brother Demetric Muhammad. Are you with us, Brother Demetric Muhammad?
Yes, Sister Salima, I'm here with you.
Alhamdulillah, Brother Demetric Muhammad. I'm so glad to have you with us, and thank you so much for agreeing to speak here with us today. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Brother Demetric.
Well, Sister Salima, I'm very grateful and honored for the privilege and the opportunity to be with you and the illustrious guests and the audience here today. I am here in the great city of Chicago. This is the Savior's Day weekend for the Nation of Islam. And this weekend, we celebrate the birth of our founder, Master Fard Muhammad, and it will be culminating in a major address by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan tomorrow at our headquarters Mosque Mariam here in Chicago, Illinois. And so I was inside of one representation of an aspect of the legacy of the Black Muslims in America, which was a Black Muslim restaurant earlier when I came on the Zoom. And the noise was kind of loud. So I said, let me get out of there so I can at least be heard and hear from you all. But I grew up in the Mississippi Delta, which might at first hearing be something of a strange place to come into Islam. But during my coming of age in the 1980s and 1990s, the music of my generation was hip hop music. And at that time, there was an influx of many rappers and artists who were using music to communicate various aspects of both Black history, Black nationalism, and Islam. And so that coupled with the efforts by my teacher, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, in the rebuilding of the Nation of Islam, it helped me to gravitate toward Islam and accept it as a religion and a way of life. And so that is my genesis. And that started when I was a high school student and continued through my college years. And by Allah's grace and mercy, we're celebrating 32 years since accepting Islam. And it has been a marvelous journey. It has been a beautiful story filled with the ebb and flow of life. But I borrow an expression from the biblical narrative, wherein it reads in the Gospels, we count it all joy. And so I'm very thankful, and I join my big brother, Imam Siraj Wahaj, when he says that I am so happy to be a Muslim.
Amen. Alhamdulillah. Thank you so much for being here, Brother Demetric. We are honored to have you here, particularly during Savior's Day weekend, which I know is a very important weekend to all members of the Nation of Islam. So thank you so much for gracing us with your time on this day.
It is my honor.
Alhamdulillah. First question, what does the legacy of Black Muslims in the United States mean to you? And you started a little bit on that, but if you could expound on that a little bit. The legacy of Black Muslims in the U.S., what does that mean to you?
It's an extraordinary legacy, Sister Salima, and my mind goes to one of the great hadiths of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he spoke about that a time would come when the sun would rise in the west. And when you look at the glorious history of Muslims in the Western Hemisphere, you see that it has been really a struggle and a journey to establish in the Western world a world where Islam has frequently been viewed as an enemy religion. The legacy of Black Muslims in the Western Hemisphere has been marked by our struggle against slavery, our struggle against imperialism, our struggle against colonialism. It was on May 11th in 1526, I believe, when the Spanish crown actually issued forth formal decrees that forbade the importation of Muslims into the so-called New World or Western Hemisphere. And this was because from the earliest days in the transatlantic slave trade, Muslims understood what Allah says to us in the Quran, that persecution is worse than slaughter. And so whenever they found Muslims among the enslaved captives, our foreparents, they always knew that revolution would be forthcoming. And so if you look at the history of the Haitian Revolution, Professor Sylvia Ann Diouf, in her wonderful book, Servants of Allah, African Muslims Enslaved in the Americas, documents how at the root of the Haitian Revolution was the revolutionary leaders Macandal and Bowman. Bowman being so called as a French variant of the English bookman, wherein this pioneer of the Haitian Revolution was known for being fond of the Holy Quran. Looking at that and looking at how that inspired enslaved revolutionaries like Nat Turner coming into the 20th century, and seeing how Marcus Mosiah Garvey was influenced by Islam, the movement of the Moorish Science Temple in America by Noble Drew Ali, of course, the Nation of Islam, all of the various communities and the beautiful mosaic of expressions of Islam in the Black Islamic community, all being joined and united together in shining forth a light of truth, a light of freedom, justice, and equality in a society that has a foundation that it often likes to be distanced from, and that is a history and the legacy of the enslavement of our foreparents. So Islam has been a spiritual force to stand against colonialism, imperialism, and enslavement, and it has given to us the impetus to do for ourselves. For many years, that was a mantra, do for self. And we often clashed with other schools of thought who sought assimilation and who sought integration when we preached do for self and to create an independent reality in America. And so not only do you have a legacy of do for self and that philosophy manifesting in the economic arena, but nowadays it is somewhat common for there to be independent schools or Afrocentric schools. That is also a part of the legacy of the Black Muslims in America. For in the early 1930s, the earliest clash that members of the Nation of Islam had with local law enforcement authorities was over the fact that men and women who were learning Islam understood that they needed to have a school to educate their babies into what they were learning. And when they began to take their children out of the Detroit public school system, the educational administration came down and there was a battle and there was arrest. And these are pioneers who really are not just pioneers, again, in the Muslim community, but they're also pioneers in the movement among Black people to educate our children in a way that makes them love themselves, have pride in themselves, and to have an education that helps them be what Allah created them to be. And the final thought on that point, I heard our sister from Oklahoma talk about her fathers coming to Islam in the penal system. And I do a lot of work in correctional environments as an Islamic chaplain. And one of the things that adds to the great legacy of Islam among Black people in America is the fact that once upon a time, the philosophy of incarceration was that you pretty much throw people away or lock people up and throw away the key. You feed them bread and water or whatever you think you want to give to them. And so when you look at the history of religious rights of persons of all faiths, Jews and Christians and Muslims, even agnostics and other spiritual belief systems, you see that it was the litigation that was initiated by the so-called Black Muslims that laid the groundwork legally such that religious devotees of all faiths now have constitutionally guaranteed rights to practice their religion while they are incarcerated. And scholars have acknowledged this in various writings. Garrett Felber and others have written about this contribution that Black Muslims have made and as a part of our legacy.
Alhamdulillah, that is amazing. And Brother Demetric, I don't want to cut you off. I want you to stay on the same path because you just said the so-called Black Muslim. And one of the questions that I have for you is that many would say that the Nation of Islam was the first to use the term Black Muslim. What is the importance of this etymology and how does this embrace our identities as both Black and Muslim?
Well, you know, it is a wonderful term, and certainly it is a term that is not without controversy. You know, Dr. C. Eric Lincoln, a beautiful brother and scholar, wrote a book entitled The Black Muslims in America, and it was one of the first major studies of the Nation of Islam. And I heard some of the panelists earlier talk about the great legacy of Minister Malcolm X, El-Hajj Malik Shabazz. And at a certain point, he and the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad had a plan for the distribution of more than 50,000 copies of that book. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the leaders of the Nation of Islam, we never actually said to mainstream America, we are the Black Muslims. We just said we are Muslims. But it became a term that differentiated the members of the Nation of Islam from Muslims from the immigrant community and from abroad. But that terminology, I have noticed in recent years, has become in vogue. For several years, I participated with other brothers and sisters, imams, leaders of different Islamic communities, and what was called the Black Muslim Psychology Conference. And a beautiful sister who was working on her PhD put that conference together. And it was a wonderful assembly of the beautiful, again, mosaic and tapestry of Islam from Black America and all of our different expressions, which in and of itself is significant and quite profound. And I would say is a sterling example to Muslims and Islamists globally. Because even though we have, and in many instances, great theological or cultural differences throughout the Black Islamic mosaic in America, we don't choose to resolve our differences through the use of violence like we see among other sects or communities around the world. So we have found, I believe, a way to peacefully coexist and express brotherhood and sisterhood as Black Muslims, being tied together first through our faith in Islam, our belief in Allah, but also through our struggle against oppression. And so through both aspects of what that term means, to be Black and to be Muslim, we find a unity, we find a brotherhood and a sisterhood that has been serving us, I believe, quite well.
Alhamdulillah, that was a perfect answer, mashallah, Brother Demetric. And my very last question, which we just have about 60 seconds to wrap up with you. You, as we know, are an accomplished author, writing on numerous topics. What has been your favorite book to work on, and what advice would you give to our audience members who are pursuing a career in writing?
Well, you know, it's difficult to say what has been my favorite. I kind of choose subjects that I am inspired by at the moment. And so that means that whichever project I'm currently working on, that is my favorite at that time. But I would say to those, first of all, especially in the Black community, in the Islamic community, just a word of encouragement for us to write and to publish. Because for too long, there have been those outside of our community who have written about us, and they have taken control of the narrative about us. And I may butcher this quote, but I like it. I believe it is attributed to a Nigerian proverb, but it says something about, you know, if the lion ever gets a chance to tell his story, then the story of the hunt appears altogether different. And so we now, as a people, we now, as a great spiritual community, we must now write and document our experience and tell our own story and take control of our own narrative.
Alhamdulillah. And on that note, thank you so much. This was absolutely informative and just so heartwarming to hear from you, Brother Demetric Muhammad. Thank you so very much for being with us. Please give our salams to the brothers and sisters at Savior's Day this weekend, and we will continue to have you guys on and work with you in all ways possible, inshallah. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, dear sister. Thank you. Wa alaikum salam.
Okay, everyone. So I'm so thankful for all of the dynamic speakers that we have had with us today. We are coming to the end of our program, and we just have one more presentation for you. And I'm so excited to introduce my dear friend, Preacher Moss. Preacher Moss is an internationally acclaimed comedian and writer and thought leader and scholar. His End of Racism comedy and lecture tour voted 2 times as the best diversity act on college campuses, is critically acclaimed and recognized as an industry standard for being tough, honest, and brilliantly funny, as a voice on the conversation of race, diversity, and understanding in this world. Preacher Moss's unique lecture style has been described as smooth, intelligent, and thought-provoking, as his seriously funny message simultaneously occupies 2 spaces of laughter and intellectual engagement at the same time. At this time, it is my pleasure and honor to introduce to you my dear friend and brother.
Check. Can you hear me?
Moss. Check, mic check. As we hear.
We're good. All right. Thank you so much, Sister Salima. Shout out. I have my logo right here. This is the official Emgage headquarters in Adelaide, Australia. Our goal, brothers and sisters, is to register to vote 1 million koala bears and kangaroos. No, first of all, I want to thank everybody for having me on the show. Big shout out to Brother Muhammad and all the other guests that have been on the program. Listen, everybody, you know, this whole aspect of African American Muslims and African Americans and Black History Month, our whole idea is, you know, we are a miracle. And by most standards, we're not supposed to be here, but we are. And I believe that we can change so many things just by having an open mind and allowing things to flow. You know, our children are some of the most important aspects and assets of our community, and making sure that they're leaders. You know, my little one stood up for me, and I was totally unexpected. I didn't even think it was in her. I was driving down the road, got pulled over by a cop. You know, he rolled up to the window, he tapped on the window, asked me, you know, license and registration. I gave it to him. He said, you know why I pulled you over? I said, because I'm a good looking black man. He said, that's true. But he said, the reason I pulled you over, wait for it. I never heard this before. He said, the reason I pulled you over is because you were texting and driving. I said, sir, I disagree. He said, no, you were texting and driving. I said, no, I wasn't. We break into a huge argument. Yes, you were. No, I wasn't. Yes, you were. No, I wasn't. Finally, alhamdulillah, from the back, my little Black Panther just jumped in. She said, Mr. Officer, you are wrong. She said, my daddy was not texting and driving. I was like, yeah, girl. She goes, he was reading his emails. I was like, girl, you just like your mama. But, you know, I have to say this, you know, when we talk about race in America, it's not the most creative thing, brothers and sisters. I mean, clearly, every race in America does the same things, whether it's towards Muslims or black people. They do the same things. They're not very creative. The same 3 things. Whatever it is that's bad about you, they highlight. Whatever that's good about you, they discredit. And whatever it is they don't know about you, they make up. Let me say it again. Whatever it is that's bad about you, they highlight. Whatever it is that's good about you, they discredit. And whatever they don't know about you, they make up. I'm like, that's the whole hustle. but you can have fun with it. I remember years ago. This is way back. The KKK filed for bankruptcy. Now I don't know about you, but as a black man, I think that's funny as hell. Just the idea that a hate group might have to have a yard sale just cracks me up. But the funny thing about hate and technology is it just keeps on going, keeps on going. They actually wound up on the internet. One of the first hate sites on the internet was a KKK website, and I went there, brothers and sisters. And I'm here to tell you, I went there with a dark heart. I went there with a lot of biases. I'm thinking KKK website. I'm thinking the worst thing I can. I'm thinking I'm gonna go there. I'm gonna see links up on center blocks, words misspelled. Brothers and sisters, I was wrong. I was wrong. I went to the website and it was organized. All the hate was organized. And I'm here to tell you, Muslims, they hate a whole lot of people. You're not special. They still hate black people. We still number one. Hey. But they hate blacks, Latinos, gays, lesbians, Jews, Native Americans. They even hate Buddhists. I was like, damn, how do you hate a Buddhist? What did Dalai Lama ever do to you? But the most impressive thing was they wrote an article about every group they hated. And I'm going to tell you something. I don't know who wrote the articles, but I'm going to say this. Whoever wrote the articles made very, very compelling arguments. I'm serious. They wrote articles about black people and Muslims. About 10 minutes to reading them, I started hating black people. I was like, what? We are out of control. But my favorite article, and you should hear this, was about black men. The name of the article was called Fear of a Black Man. Fear of a Black Man. Gave you all the reasons to fear a black man. Like 4 of them scared me. And I'm telling you, out there, if you're watching, if you ever wanted to be scared of a black man, didn't know how, this was the article for you. I'm here to tell you. The top 2 reasons to fear a black man, according to this article. Number 2, all black men are irresponsible. And number 1, all black men are sexually irresponsible. They're sexually, irresponsible. I was like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. I was like, I don't think I can be by myself. But the scope of it was, brothers and sisters, the highlight, and this is going way back, but they had chat rooms. Now, let me tell you something. I went to the chat room, and I'm going to tell you, anonymity is something that can be enjoyed both ways. I went to their little chat room, I clicked in, they didn't know who I was, they just thought I was one of the boys. I was like, hey, what's going on? They were like, brother, I got problems. I was like, what's the problem? I said, look, I just found out my sister's in love with a Mexican. I couldn't resist. I was like, oh no. Then I hit him back. Well, it could be worse. He was like, how you figure? I said, according to this article I just read, she could be in love with a black guy. He said, damn, you're right. And he said, brother, you're pretty smart. I said, yeah, I think so. He said, listen, my name's Tommy. I'm from Columbus, Ohio. Where you from? I'm like, Washington, D.C. Then he got suspicious. He was like, and he typed it out. He said, correct me if I'm wrong, brother, but who? There's a whole lot of black people in D.C., ain't it? I was like, mm-hmm. He said, well, what's your name? What's your name? I said, Mustafa. He said, get out. But I tell folks, and another thing, I tell folks, you got to have a sense of humor. I am officially campaigning to be the fundraiser, not the fundraiser, but the fundraiser for Emgage. And I tell people, sometimes you need some old-fashioned remedies to work through some stuff. You know how Muslims always get talked about trying to have Sharia court? I'd like to have one Sharia court on the condition that I get to be the judge. Because if I was the judge of Sharia court, there would be no other Sharia courts in the world, in the land. You know why? Because if I was a judge in Sharia court, it doesn't matter what you did when you come into my courtroom, doggone it, you getting 25 years in prison. That solves a lot of things. In fact, first case, I preach Moss, and the judge of the judge of Sharia court. First case, it's like, Your Honor, I got caught drinking. I'm like, 25 years. Next case, Your Honor, I missed Fajr. 25 years. Next case, Your Honor, you don't remember me? Who are you? I'm the man that introduced you to your wife. Death. But I had to put that out there. Some of y'all are like, I don't like that joke. So what? I'm in Australia. What can you do? But let me wrap this up because I know y'all got things to do. And I know Salima's like, you better wrap it. I had things to do too. Listen, you got to enjoy Islam. Like my part of being a Muslim and African American is beautiful. You know, it's a journey. In fact, one of my favorite stories is I ran into a brother after I took my shahada. I thought he was, you know what I'm saying? I thought he was like a sheikh or something. You know why? Because he had a really long black beard and it was pretty. It was shiny. It was glistening. Like if you put a microphone to it, you might hear birds sing. Oh. But I found out he wasn't a sheikh. He had basically took his shahada 4 weeks before me. And it was a case of the blind leading the blind. And I knew he might not be a sheikh. And this is how. We were going downtown, the Adhan went off. I said, hey, Abdullah, that's the Adhan. He said, is that what that is? I said, yeah, you want to pray? He said, yeah. I realized I hadn't seen him pray in 4 weeks. We walked to the mosque. People saw that beard. They went crazy. Please, brother, please, lead the prayer. Lead the prayer. I would say, Abdullah, don't lead that prayer. He said, they love me. Preach. They made me a sheikh. Man, all I'm going to say is that was the longest Asa prayer I've ever been a part of. He was just standing in front of people for like 25 minutes like this. He didn't even slam out. He just turned around and he was like, y'all good? And I'm good. Emgage, Salima, everybody, continue to support this beautiful organization. And believe me, one day we will be out here in Adelaide and we're going to have 1 million koala bears and kangaroos register for the rights of Muslims and those of people of color. I'm Preacher Moss. You're not. Take care of yourself. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam, brother Preacher Moss. I don't know about you guys, but I cracked up most of that. So hilarious. Just effortlessly hilarious all the time. Thank you so much for being with us, brother Preacher Moss. And that's it for our presentation today. We are so excited to be with you again for a second year. We want you to continue to follow Black Muslim authors, follow the work that Black Muslim leaders are doing. One of the leaders mentioned earlier the work of the Black Muslim Psychology Conference. My dear friend, Dr. Camila Mukman Rashad, who is organizing that on an annual basis. There are so many ways to learn more about the outstanding contributions of Black Muslims in America. Shout out to my team, Aisha, Iman, who is running point in the background, Wa'il, Muhammad, Zainab, Brother Ansel, who is with us from Florida, Brother Kadam, who is with us from Florida. Also, I see you there. So many of us, it's so much work that goes into the efforts that we put together on a daily basis from the states that we work from locally and as a national team. We put in a lot of effort, and we want everyone to work together and unify so that we can maximize our opportunities to make an impact in this great nation. And so my final remarks to you would be to stay engaged, be active in these upcoming midterm elections, get registered, make a plan to vote, bring others with you, and get out the vote so that we can get the real work done. Thank you so very much. Or follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Go to our website. It's Emgage. Action.org. Follow us and keep us in your dua because this work isn't easy. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Take care and happy Black History Month to you all.